All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you logging in to this segment today. We have an exciting evening, and the remaining 1 hour, I'm sure, is going to be very informative and an eye-opener in so many different areas. My name is Havindra, and I will be the moderator of this session. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce to you some of our distinguished panelists who are with us today. We have a group of extremely experienced individuals who will be sharing a number of different thoughts on a very relevant topic. Our topic for today, as you can see written behind me, is opportunities amidst challenging times, right? And without doubt, as a country, we are going through unprecedented times of challenge. And leave the country alone, globally, the whole world is going through unprecedented times. And I believe what we are going to talk about today is going to really help us to understand that amidst all of these challenges, amidst all of these obstacles, we still have opportunity and there is potential in front of us. And that's what we're here to talk about. So let me quickly introduce our panelists today. First, we have with us Ms. Chinti Weerasinghe. Chinti is the CEO of Mitra Innovations. She carries a wealth of experience with her as well, and we are so pleased to have her with us. Chinti, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We also have with us Mr. Shevan Gunatilaka. Shevan is the CEO of Millennium IT. And Shevan, it's a delight to have you with us as well. I'm really looking forward to talking with you and getting to know everything you have to share with us. We also have Mr. Austin Mascarange. Mr. Austin is a consultant and the head of the business department at IIT. Mr. Austin also comes from a wealth of experience that he carries, so much of many years leading organizations in different positions of senior management. And he also has a wealth of information to share with us, and also currently is the head of the business department here at IIT. So we'll bring a lot of academic background to what we're talking about as well. All right, so let me start by putting you, Chinti, on the spotlight for a moment. And Mitra Innovations is an organization that's been doing so much in the past several years. And if I'm not mistaken, Chinti, I think you've been, the company's been around since 2012, if I remember right, okay? Yep. And I'd like to just ask you a quick question on how things have been in the IT industry amidst all of what we've gone through, and maybe you could share a bit of insight about the Mitra story as well. With us.
Yep, happy to, Harinder, thank you again for the opportunity. So Mitra Innovations, this is our 10th anniversary. We're very proud to be here. It's very well known that only a very, very small percentage of companies make it to this anniversary. I think 3% in the industry. It's been, you know, as the name indicates, we're really proud of innovating in the market, really challenging the status quo wherever we go, looking for challenges businesses face and helping them solve that through technology, enabled through technology. So Mitra Innovation is about now over 300 people globally. I joined the organization a few years ago after a long tenured career in another large services organization. And I'm also a proud alumni of IIT as well. So I think from an industry perspective, we really focus on the bleeding edge technologies. We want to be in the forefront. So, you know, maybe some fun facts for the group over here is that more than 90% of global enterprises, they say in 2020, will rely on hybrid cloud. And that's where our focuses are. You know, we know that cloud computing is one of the #1 most demanded skills if you look on LinkedIn and things like that. And, you know, that's where we've been. And through the pandemic, it's really great because I think we've reinvented ourselves. What we did during the pandemic, obviously the world went into a bit of a shock. However, what's really great is, from day one onwards, we were, up and running. We were, very resilient in that, from a workforce perspective. And I think in the IT industry, it's a privilege that we can work from anywhere, we can be productive from anywhere, and we can drive, more and more customers to work with this beautiful island and the people we produce in this island. So, and Mitra Innovation was no different. In the pandemic, we actually reinvented ourselves. And I think every challenging situation gives you, yes, a challenge, but also an opportunity to rethink how you operate. Mitra, the group actually became Mitra Group. We split the organization into two. One focused on driving services, and the other focused on various product ventures. Basically, we want to innovate products that would be relevant in the market, and that has become our focus as an organization. So, anybody who feels completely entrepreneurial can join our ventures arm and be part of our product journeys. Or if they're strong with working with clients, love going abroad, staying with working with clients all over the world, there's great opportunities in Mitra Innovations as well.
Thank you, Jayanti. That's interesting. Jayanti, can you also tell me, in your opinion, how big is the IT industry? Locally, regionally, globally, how big is it?
Of course, I think the global technology industry is, closing about, about 10 billion from a people perspective, right? In this region in particular. Actually, not globally, but in this region. If you think about India, India's IT industry is over, I think now $5 billion, or even vastly more, probably by now. We are much smaller in comparison, but what's really different in our industry is the fact that we've got innovators. We've called ourselves the island of ingenuity. And that's no small, tagline, if you will. We do great things. As small as we are, we've done very innovative things for very large organizations like the London Stock Exchange, like Citibank, like eBay. And we continue to sort of really be in the forefront. And when I talk to clients, I've had clients basically request me to have the engineering centers in Sri Lanka because they do see a difference in the individuals that we nurture. So the opportunities are vast, and what you will also find, and this is very interesting, that irrespective of what your talent might be, you might be very strong in engineering, you might be very strong in client services, you might be very analytical. The IT industry has an opportunity for all of that type. So great, vast opportunities, and it's a great place to be, because as an industry, even in these challenging times, we are one that can continue to produce and deliver what this country needs. We can deliver much needed foreign exchange, because unlike every other industry out there that is exporting in Sri Lanka, the IT industry actually is the only one that does not require to import things to be able to export, right? So for us, our asset is the knowledge that we gain and have.
Right. Thank you. You touched on some very interesting points there, Jayanti. I'm going to come back to you because we've got more to talk about all of that. But I'm going to switch the focus on to Shevan for a moment. Shevan, Millennium IT has been around, I think, since what, 1990s? 1996,
actually, yeah. This turned 26.
Yeah,
26 this year.
That's amazing. So, Shevan, if I can ask you the same question, right? From in the midst of the challenges we are facing, because that's where everyone's eyes are. Everyone is concerned about the current situation in the country, but you've been around through some challenges as well, right? Since 96. So you carry that experience of knowing that in spite of different challenges or obstacles, you can always rise up. Can you tell us, in your experience as the leader of that organization, how do you see the IT industry doing today and in the future amidst all of this?
Yeah, so I think going back to Millennium IT and being 26 years old, it has. I mean, I'm relatively new. I've been at Millennium IT for about close to 2 years now, but the company being 26 years, it has seen it all from early days of IT and the technology landscape in Sri Lanka, and being part of some of the significant groundbreaking projects in Sri Lanka in terms of shaping that landscape, right? Some of the largest mission critical technology projects run in Sri Lanka as well. And then all that during seeing through a 30-year war, so much of political, social, economic turbulence in the country, which we all know of, and of course even the company changing hands several times. I think being all that, I think this is what the IT industry does. Is it enables you to be resilient. There are so many avenues and opportunities that are available through the IT industry, which enables you to be resilient. And I think, again, coming back to the whole crisis, and Sri Lanka has been in so many different types of crisis situations, right, over the last 2-3 years now, even the last 2 years with the pandemic and all that. I think at its most, IT companies in Sri Lanka did really well. I mean, they've been resilient. I think all the teams have been relentless as well, right? But I think the fact that technology itself being an enabler, right? I mean, it can enable a lot of in terms of helping overcome challenges, in terms of especially in a crisis situation, which we really saw, right? Being to digitally transforming some industries, to making sure you can, even things like being able to communicate during the pandemic. I think there were so many organizations who were able to get back to productivity very soon, and who were hardly using technology before that, right? Even government organizations. So when government organizations got back, they were doing customer service with the general public. Hospitals, healthcare workers, they were all active in a very short time, right? It was all because of technology, and those are the opportunities I think that technology has enabled, and it's basically creating, enabling that as well. So it's obviously a evolving industry. I think the opportunities that we see now, you can't predict what's going to be in 5 years' time, but I think we see the direction that it's taking. It's a lot of digital transformation happening. Everything that we are seeing is getting digitized. And I think it also got expedited during the whole pandemic, where there were enterprises that were not even thinking digital are now looking at going digital, right? And even in Sri Lanka, we saw this so much, right? From some of the supermarket chains, some of the leading supermarket chains who didn't have a digital presence, within weeks were able to start selling online, and that really helped the people as well, right? So this is why IT creates those opportunities even in a crisis, because there's so much of things that you can do to enable communication, enable interaction, enable payments, commercial transactions, and so on. Those capabilities that have been now enabled through technology. So I think those are the opportunities that kind of lay the foundation, even looking at the next several years, and whatever challenges that we're going to be headed with. Even in this current crisis that we are faced with, I think Chinti touched upon this, but IT industry is probably one of the few industries that can be very productive and still deliver and earn foreign exchange, much needed foreign exchange for the country as well, because of the agility that the industry offers, being able to work from anywhere, anytime, and deliver, right?
Shravan, very good. But have you found that the people who work in the industry, are they ready for this kind of change? Have they been ready for this sort of the dramatic change that we have seen?
So, I mean, even people who are not ready, I think, didn't have a choice. At least in the recent times, people didn't have a choice, right? People had to adapt because these were livelihoods at stake, right? And I think technology was the right solution, right? From the platforms that were put in place for people to again interact and transact and be productive. And we are not only talking about software companies or technology companies. These are all types of organizations in the country which were enabled and were very productive in a very short time. So even people, I think of all generations, managed to get on this, and the technology has evolved so much, right? It has become very intuitive. Some of the technology applications that are out there now are very intuitive, right? So I mean, people, all generations from kindergarten children to some of the elderly, even being able to be go on with their livelihoods, keep getting educated. All of these things continue. Right? So I think that just makes that, I mean, it's easy to adapt even if you're not ready.
Right. So working from home, Chinti and Shevan, both of you, has it been successful?
Definitely. I'll go first, but I think definitely. I think, to be honest, there were challenges, especially when you start having nearly 500 people suddenly, having all of them work offline from home. It's not from a technology perspective, because everyone, I think, nowadays, especially in the technology companies, are geared up for that anyway. A lot of them have, almost all of them have laptops, Wi-Fi. As soon as you have connection somewhere, you can just start getting productive. But there are other challenges in terms of, some people who are sometimes in rural areas. How do we get them connected where the connectivity is not there? Stuff like that, right? But solutions were found. I think the telecommunication companies came to the rescue on that as well. So solutions were found, and making sure that people have a right environment to work in, working from home and all that. But I think within a few weeks, at least I can speak for Millennium IT, productivity was it was just almost untouched.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think I 100% agree. I think for us, we've decided coming out of this experience that we will continue to be in hybrid mode, meaning come together for collaboration, but work from anywhere. I think it actually had an added advantage. Folks, we've actually extended the ability for our teams to be closer to their family. For enabling sort of a more balanced work-life balance. Now, one would argue, I think it takes a little bit of training or maybe discipline is the right word, to make sure that you don't overwork or you don't, overchill, right? But it actually has enabled for more people to come back to work, be with family. I have a lot of team members who have gone back to their hometowns and can be with their extended families because of hybrid working, not have to live in the city. And it has also taught the organizations that were a little bit more rigid maybe to open their eyes and say, it can happen and we can be productive. And we haven't seen, even through our, extremely challenging times of having these power cuts and things like that, we haven't lost it, an hour of productivity. Obviously, we have supported our teams right throughout that, and we've been very aware of their situation and well-being, both physical and emotional. So we had to be a little bit more cognizant of mental well-being, right? We have, so there were challenges, from all aspects of it. Did we see some collaboration? Today we come together for workshops, we come together when we have to collaborate, because you cannot beat that kind of teaming effort, right? But we disperse and we're fine, to go back to our homes and work there. So I think we've all learned from it. And, you know what they say, right? It's nothing like when you're put in the hot seat or you're put in a trouble situation, as human beings, it's natural that we find a way to come through it. And I think we've all been very, very resilient, as a nation. We've been resilient through a lot of things. And I think that just probably came naturally for us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Austin, if I could ask you this question, in light with what we've been talking about just now, how prepared do you feel the younger generation who are just entering into the industry, right, who are on the verge of entering into the industry, how prepared are they for this, being able to be productive in the corporate sector? Yeah, there's, I think Chinti was just talking about a level of maturity that is needed to be able to manage yourself, right? Working from home, right? Not chilling too much, not working too much, but finding that absolute balance. How ready is the younger generation? And is there anything that we do in terms of educating them in their undergraduate studies, in their postgraduate studies, to prepare them for for this, because it's not going to go away, right? Working from home, working from anywhere, working remotely is something that's here pretty much to stay, I suppose.
Yeah. So I mean, what you are talking about is a much bigger challenge for the students, because by and large, our schooling system has been sort of a, I don't want to be too critical of our schooling system, but our schooling system has been more or less a very controlled environment, where our children are not given too many choices and they don't have too much of freedom, right? So, you have classes, timetables, and tuition classes with schedules and, things like that, and examinations to get through and things like that. So our kids are somewhat used to, working towards things that are kind of thrust on them, so that in a way it's a bit of a disadvantage, because when you don't have, when you take all that away, right? So the kids are unable to cope with it, because many of them don't know how to cope with the situation where they don't have a class to attend to, and it's an option for them to be on. I mean, when you have an online class, a student can just log in and just walk away, pretend to be in the class but not in the class. But in the A-level classroom, somebody will pull you up saying, why weren't you in the class, or why are you looking out of the window and not looking at me, sort of thing. So you don't have that in this kind of thing. So that's been a big challenge for us. But we have, like Chinti and Shevan also said, now we have also been going towards a hybrid model of delivering education. So we believe that education has two aspects to it. One is, of course, this whole thing of imparting knowledge. A certain amount of, a large number of our students are doing computing related studies. So a large part of our education consists of giving them the basic fundamentals. So we do quite a lot of teaching here. But there is also a large element of, sort of helping the students to get into a discipline of learning to learn, right? So the kids have to get the discipline of learning to learn, so that, they do their own work, and, they don't depend on the lecturer. They don't do exactly what the lecturer tells them or teaches them, but they do something creative, do out-of-the-box thinking. Now, those are things that we value very much. So in a way, I mean, these are things not that things that we have invented ourselves. In a way, these are things that are, let me just quickly share you one slide, if you have given me permission. So let's see whether I can share this. Okay, so I mean, if you can see that slide that I put up there now, right? Yeah. So basically, now if you look at now, these are what you call graduate attributes that we are trying to have for all our students. And this actually comes from University of Westminster, one of our partners. Similar ones are there, right? So as you can see, even the companies nowadays are not looking for people who have just memorized and got through an exam and, and come to work. Companies are looking for people who are critical and creative thinkers, who would, look at everything that the company is doing with a critical eye and try to, rethink and, think, okay, how can I do this in a completely different way, right? Rather than, do as you say kind of thing. In the olden days, education, especially in Sri Lanka, has been do as you say, right? So one of the global attributes that we are trying to build in is, for people to be critical and creative thinkers. And of course, the most important thing to prepare people for a world where, you're going to work remotely sometimes is, to be literate and effective communicators. right? Now I have been in the I was in the software industry before I came into full-time academics. So, we used to do lots of projects in all kinds of different countries. Countries where English was the first language and countries where English wasn't the first language. And it's always a challenge to communicate with someone who doesn't come from our kind of background, who thinks differently, and who's even the English they write may not be we expect English to be, right? So we need to be able to understand that whatever English they have written, to understand, okay, this is what this person is trying to tell me, right? So like, just to tell you an interesting story, we had once when we were marketing our own product, a software product globally, we got an email from somebody out of somewhere who had gone through our website, and it had just a few words saying, I need a system, it must do X, Y, Z. That's it, right? So, what do you do with that email? Do you take it seriously, or, you just discard it? We took it seriously, and we spoke to this, contacted this guy. This was a Japanese gentleman who obviously could not write fluent English, right? So once we contacted him and started communicating with him, we got, a huge project, selling a solution to someone who was a native Japanese speaker, right? So people, now when we are going to work from home and interact with lots of different people have to be effective communicators. It's not just technical skill. They need to be able to understand the other person. So we put a lot of emphasis on what you would now call emotional intelligence. Of course, to be entrepreneurial and global outlook, right? One of the good things that has come out of this whole, pandemic and the post-pandemic economic crisis is that a lot of kids are now thinking global. But kids are thinking in terms of, okay, how can I migrate somewhere? But that's not the way to think, really. In the sense, we have, if you take, I was in the industry at the height of the terrorist problems, right? But we did massive amounts of foreign projects and brought in, dollars into the country, even when there was a, massive terrorist war going on in the country, right? But I would say, with today's, technology and all of that, why would you want to go and sit in a cold country and, freeze and not be able to go out and see the sun, right? While you can do the work from here in Sri Lanka remotely and earn in dollars, or even, get paid by your employer in, dollar related terms, you could be much better off, right? You could still be global, but sitting in Sri Lanka. So that's the good thing that has happened with, the post-pandemic world, like Siobhan said. We all learn to work from wherever we are. So that's and of course, one of the biggest things, I think one of the reasons why we believe that, if you look at Sri Lanka, why we have been successful is that, I would say, relative to the Indian industry and some of the industries from other countries, the global customer has found the Sri Lankan industry as very reliable, more ethical operator, right? So when we were, when I was in the industry, we were selling solutions to so many customers in so many parts of the world, but we were able to build up a very ethical, a very value-driven business where, they sort of, would turn back and say, okay, these guys are reliable, right? They wouldn't play us out, right? If they shipped a software to us, that would have been, properly tested and, it'll work. It doesn't have to be, put back for, correction later, right? So a value-driven, ethically driven industry, it has to be there in Sri Lanka. And that is part of the reason why we have been successful, right? Why the Sri Lankan engineer is considered a better engineer is because the Sri Lankan engineer is not going to lie and say, you know, this thing will do this XYZ while it doesn't do XYZ, right? So it's a proper value-based, ethics-based, environment is also very important. I mean, I don't have to tell you the lack of it, what will cost the society. You can look all around and, you know, I don't have to tell you that at this moment in time, everybody knows about it, right? Okay, so these are some of the graduate attributes that we are trying to build into the students. Of course, some of this requires that the students come in physically also. So that is why the undergraduate education that we are doing now, we are also going towards a hybrid model where, when the need arises, we do online lectures and all of that, but we also bring the people to the campus so that they interact. So for becoming communicator and creative thinker and all of that, the social environment, the other students, the interaction, all of that also matters a lot. Right? So most probably, going to the next semester and so on, we would bring in students on campus as against being pure online as in the past. Right? But part of the reason that drives us to bring them on campus is because we want to build in these other values into the students so that they become effective professionals and citizens when they go out. It's not a case of just imparting information. If it was just a case of imparting just information, they could have just learned it from an online course from some internet site. That's not what we are delivering in terms of education. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, Austin. Thank you. That was very insightful. And you speak with so much of passion about your past in the industry. Do you miss the industry?
Yes, I do miss the industry.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Austin. Thank you for that insight. A quick question to both Chinti and Shevan. Maybe Shevan, you could go first. Now, is there a gap? I think Austin just touched on, the rest of the world, India and other countries that provide IT services as well globally. Is there a gap that you see in Sri Lanka? Of course, we did mention earlier on that, quality-wise and preference-wise, there seems to be an inclination towards Sri Lanka. But do you see a gap, if there exists one? And if there is, what is that gap in the IT industry amongst us, our people, that can take us to the next level if we fill it in, if we sort it out?
Sure. So I think you can look at the potential gap in several ways. I think one thing is obviously from a knowledge perspective, definitely, and the talent that comes out of our universities and our programs are definitely world class. I think from the performance that they have even during university to their internship programs, participating in this Google Summer of Code to IIT competitions to Microsoft Imagine Cup and all that. I think you definitely see the global rankings that they achieve. Basically put them on the map on that, and then they go on to do great things. Right, we're working in the aviation industry to building fintech applications, cryptocurrency applications, to so many patterns behind their names and so on. So definitely from a knowledge perspective and skill, intellectual perspective, definitely I think they are world class, and work with so many people from so many countries, and I think definitely second to none. On the softer side of things, there was a gap which I think over the last probably 20 years has been narrowing, looking from obviously from a communication perspective. And when I say communication, it's not just English. I think the English level of English they're being able to communicate is really good compared to some of our neighboring countries as well. But I think when I say communication, it is also being assertive communication, being able to challenge situations and make sure that we are working in the best interest of the customer and so on. So that requires some level of training, coaching, and but those things. And in addition to that, also things like creative thinking. And I think Austin's points also had this creative thinking is something that has to get ingrained at an earlier age, right? hope, especially from school days, and then our school education system is still relatively primitive, right? But at least at a university level, ingrain those things around creative thinking, strategic thinking, and when I say strategic thinking, so creative thinking is basically a very simple thing in terms of when you conceptualize it, looking at some of the applications that are out there. That if you compare a banking application or supermarket application here in Sri Lanka with something in the US, for example, right, you see a stark difference. Banking application, something you can't even navigate the application. See, that's because that level of thinking that has gone into the user experience, right? Or what is the best user experience you can give a person, right? On the other hand, I think it also comes down to the education system in Sri Lanka, where people don't demand that quality as well, right? and so if you don't have a application with that level of user experience, that world-class user experience, then people, at least locally, it doesn't really matter. But if you're trying to take something global, it does matter. that really does matter, because people are not going to accept your product or what you're building there. Right? And then the other thing is strategic thinking. Strategic thinking, being able to create those opportunities. Right? It's not about crafting a strategy for a company, but especially if you're going into the region, going global, and all that, you need to go out there and create opportunities, and that requires a level of basically putting things together and looking at how we can do something that is in the interest of that that party or the customer there. So things like that. And again, I think we've seen evolution on that. 20 years ago, it probably was at a very lower level. But I think those communication aspects to the creative thinking, strategic thinking, those level of things have definitely evolved because of the global exposure people have got also. And I think that is also inherent to this industry. A lot of people have traveled, have worked with global customers. And I think the platforms that are there now, from social media to all of these things, also has helped in getting that exposure, which has narrowed that gap quite a bit. But I mean, definitely, if there's an area to improve, I think things like that can improve further. But definitely not from a knowledge perspective. I think, and the knowledge is out there, right? Knowledge is always out there. It's freely available now, from YouTube videos to TED Talks to white papers, blogs, and so on. If someone wants to invest 2 hours, there's a lot that they can learn just by going through that. You don't need to really go through elaborate or spend long time on these things now. So yeah, I think.
Jevan, so in one word, what the gap that you're talking about, is it confidence? Would that be the word?
Confidence is definitely one part of it, Arvind.
Right.
But there's a level of creativity
Right.
and so on that you need to extend beyond that. But confidence is also aspect. And I think when I spoke about assertive communication, that comes with confidence.
Yeah. Right.
That's very much part of confidence.
Super. Chinti, what's your take on it?
Sure, I'll add on to it. I think, and I'll probably refer back to the question you asked, Austin, which was, when a graduate comes out, what do they expect from the industry? So you'll find that the industry expects performance not in terms of just building and extending the capability, right? So when you are in the university, you're building capability, you're learning new things, you're learning technology, but performance comes with having that capability. You add on to all of the things that Jevan talked about, Austin talked about around creative thinking, and that produces an outcome for potentially a client, potentially for that organization if it's a product company. And I think we want the team to be more aware of what that outcome is, right? And to be more aware of what that expected outcome is, you need to be aware of really understanding, what's that business challenge we're solving through this. Again, this is where all the critical thinking, creativity comes in, right? If we have to move away from saying, here's what I've been asked to do, I'm going to do this, to here's what is expected, here's the outcome that's expected, what do I need to do in order to hit that expectation? It's not just following somebody else's direction, right? And I think Jevan made this point earlier about there's so much of information out there. Really learn about self-learning, right? You've got to continue to be educated, not just on building more and more of technology capabilities, but really understanding what are the business problems, how do we solve it, and how do we think creatively, right? The example of the banking experience, I think it's classic. right? The outcome here, unlike many moons ago, right, where it was to build, many years ago, IT was all about operational efficiency. Now it's all about getting more customers, engaging the customers, keeping them, a bad experience, the options are so many for people because of digitization, right? So if you deliver a bad experience through your app or anything like that, people lose customers. So if you have that outcome in your mind, you would have to be more conscious about the experience that we have to design these applications in. So essentially, I want the graduates coming into the industry to really not just say, "Oh, I'm going to learn all the technology and be really expert at this." That, I'm afraid, is not enough. That's just maybe you take it 5-10%, right? When you to really grow in your career, to be able to get to those next levels and really challenge all of the ingredients that Austin shared about being critical, creative thinking, all of that matters. And obviously you need that, because those are the things that will drive you to deliver the outcome that's being expected from anyone.
Thank you, Chinti. Very insightful. Let me just quickly address the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, if you all have any questions to ask from any one of the panelists, please feel free to send them in on the chat. If you're logged in from on Facebook Live, you may do so as well. Comment, send your questions in, and we'll be sure to pass them on to the panelists. All right. Okay. So Siobhan and Chinti, both of you are at the helm of your organizations, right? You are the captains of your respective ships, and you've been successful. Austin, you've done this multiple times as well in different organizations. Can I ask you about the next 5 years? All right. If we look at the next 5 years, as leaders in the industry, how do you see things panning out? What's going to happen in the next 5 years? I know these are stormy days, but what do you see? Chinti, would you like to go first? I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No problem. I think I see growth, to be very honest. By no means is this industry slowing down. In fact, this is probably one of the fastest growing industries globally. And it's no different in Sri Lanka. I think during our sessions, when we were kind of setting up, one of the questions Austin asked us was, what do you need? And I said more people, right? And that's really honestly true, because I think we are not producing enough. I think if we can find shortcuts to get more and more people into the industry, it'll be fantastic.
There you go. Austin, would you like to add on to that in terms of numbers?
So here's the answer to Chinti's question: more people, right? So you can see those graphs there. This is what we have been doing now. I mean, if you just take a look at it, just to make it quick for you all to observe the graph there, the black is what we passed out in the last convocation. The orange is what we are going to pass out this year, the ones who are just going to get passed out. And the beige color is what we are going to pass out in the next year, right? So we have been doing, for Chinti's question, the answer is, we have been like ramping up our output as much as possible without decreasing the quality, right? So, so this again comes back to the question that you have been asking, what is it that, what do we look for in the future, right? So of course, in Sri Lankan industry, the engineering side is very strong. So that is why there is a huge demand. Even though we are like for example, this year we would hopefully, these are all based on actual registered student numbers. This is not projection. These are actual student numbers that we have, right? So if you look at, engineering software engineering, coding type of technical people, we are going to pass out 380. But the industry is asking us for more, right? So that is the thing that is happening now. That the IT industry is, growing very, very strongly. And you can see the last one that is also growing very strongly now, not just coding. So you can see that we are also doing masters, right? If you see our masters cybersecurity numbers, that's also shooting up. So that shows there is a big demand for cybersecurity related, professionals in the market. And of course, you can see that the business information systems is steady. It has not declined, but it has slower growth because it's a more specialist. This is the kind of people that, companies like Chinti and them would really want to have. These are like the solution people, the architects, because the IT industry is a very wide industry and you need so many kinds of different people. But looking at the next 5 years, and I have not put the graphics over here, but the other area where we expect a lot of strong growth is in the area of data science and artificial intelligence. So those areas, we actually have launched 2 undergraduate degrees. Those students have not yet passed out, so those numbers are not shown here. So we have, for example, last year started artificial intelligence and data science bachelor's, which is a very computing oriented program. We are probably one of the first in Sri Lanka, where really the kids learn on the AI and how it can be used, and very technical. But at the same time, we just launched last year a very interesting bachelor's program called Business Data Analytics, right? So it's not just these hardcore engineering types of services that are done in Sri Lanka, but we have, for example, large BPOs in Sri Lanka who are doing the data analytics for global customers, right? People, even the big banks globally would send their data analytics jobs to Sri Lanka. And it's not difficult to do it from Sri Lanka because all the data is sitting in a cloud server somewhere, right? And almost all the tools that we use for data analytics nowadays are also available as cloud services, right? So it doesn't take a huge amount of capital to invest in a data analytics BPO in Sri Lanka. You don't have to carry those huge servers on premises. You could do it all off the cloud. So we see a demand in the next few years for not only the very techie data analytics professional, but also the business students who now have a grip of what they can do with data analytics for a business, right? So companies like Mitra Innovation would probably love to have those people because, those guys know business, they know what is information systems, and they know what data science can do, right? So those are the kind of people that we are trying to produce for the future. The same thing that we are doing, I have not got the numbers here, but we also have 2 master's programs. One is on big data analytics, which is a real hardcore masters in data science AI area, right? Yeah, that's really for the coders. So we see quite a lot of software engineers. Now, we do recruit quite a lot of software engineers who now come and tell us, look, I think AI and data science is the thing now. I want to stop just doing Java coding XYZ and shift to AI and data science. So we have a master's program where a lot of students are coming in to do that. Again, interestingly, we are also saying that in the future, there's going to be a huge demand for these data science people with the industry experience. So we have a MSc in business analytics, which surprisingly you would find is actually done. A lot of those students are accountants, finance guys, bankers, insurance, people from a statistics background, business analysts, and so on and so forth. So we also see a sort of a big conversion where people from many of these other disciplines, which do a lot of number crunching and quantitative decision making and so on, looking for migration to these disciplines. So we see these as key areas: cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, data science, and business data analytics from a more business point of view, and that is where we are kind of going into. But of course, there is another thing where, going back to my previous slide, if you look at the trends that are happening in the industry and the products that are coming out and what the big players are doing, there's a lot of artificial intelligence and data science there, even in the products that we are currently using. And that is sometimes a little bit scary, right? Because, you go into, YouTube and something is recommended for you, right? The other day I was looking at an article where how Spotify is doing a lot of recommendation for you of what you want to listen to, right? So eventually you will listen to only what you have been listening to, and you will never want to listen to something unusual because that never shows up on your screen, right? So there are a lot of hidden dangers to, a lot of algorithm-driven, AI-driven world. So one of the key things that we are also concerned about for the next 4 or 5 years is to sort of make the students aware of the power of the tools that they are handling, the ethical implications, the legal implications, to think of the society, the effect that it will have on the society around them, on human beings, and of course, the environment, the physical world environment, right? So those are like some of the main concerns, the main trends that we are kind of looking at for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Austin. It's a strong perspective into the future in terms of preparing, the next set of workforce as they go into the. So that's very interesting. Chinti, did you want to add anything else before we went into that?
Maybe some fun facts for the folk here. So in 2022, the IT industry is supposed to go to $8 trillion. That's 11% growth year over year. But if you look at all of our organizations, we are doubling that. I mean, Mitra has grown 30-40% year over year. We are looking to grow another 60% year over year. So but it's based on some of the target areas that even Austin was highlighting. Data is, as everybody says, is the new gold, right? That's the power of the organization, collecting that data, understanding those insights, and delivering better value to their customers is what most of our clients are trying to do. Security is going to be a huge trend. At Mitra, we are very focused on building a secure, focused development, right? So how do we ensure that security is not an afterthought, but be forefront with it? And how do we, make our engineers more aware of, violations and things like that could cause breaches? So, those are, two very, very valid areas and focus for the industry. So, for anybody coming into the industry, I think these are great areas to watch out for. Definitely AI, you talked about a lot of things. I think it's very important to focus. So as an organization, we're certainly focused around digital transformation, and this is top of mind for us as well.
Thank you, Chinti. Siobhan, what are your thoughts? The next 5 years, what's going to happen?
So I think definitely the way the industry is evolving, you're going to see a lot more digitization. I mean, we talk about all the technologies, which is one level below, right? The technologies that are going up the hype curve and so on. But it's all in line with much more digitization, automation, and so on. So along with that is where there's going to be a lot of work as well. There's obviously going to be challenges, but this is why I think both Ashton and Sindhu talk about the need for more people, right? And all of us are seeing that shortage. Actually, we get calls from partners in India asking if we can provide people. I mean, when you see India asking for more people, then there's a problem in the industry globally, right? But this is all due to that increased level of activity, right, in terms of digitization and so on. But I think in some ways the technology industry itself is also solving some of that. Like, I mean, if you look at from a software perspective, things like AI or even this low code, no code platforms that are making it much more easier and faster to develop applications, right? You don't need to take months or years now to develop application. You use these platforms, you can probably develop an application in weeks, right? And it just cuts down that effort that's been taken. So I think those are all positive. But the technology is enabling that within the technology industry itself, right? And basically try and overcome some of the challenges that are there. But definitely, I think we are going to see a lot more digitization, even in the developing countries. And I think even in a country like Sri Lanka, despite all challenges, I think we will see more digitization happening at all levels, even at a government level, right? I think that can probably cut down a lot of costs in terms of some of the aspects that are happening now, and so on. And then, of course, automation, we talk about edge computing, 5G technologies coming in, AI, robotics, and so on, which will all, create, basically make some of the manual processes more, basically automate, make it more agile, faster time to market, and so on, right? So I think we are definitely in for the long haul when it comes to the IT industry. There's a lot of work to be done. We definitely need a lot of skilled people in the industry, and I think the opportunities are vast. Right? I think if you want to specialize into something, there's so many different interesting areas now. Right? One area that we have launched at Millennium IT is this concept of smart buildings. Right? I think it's a very interesting area where basically you're automating a building. Right? You basically put in sensors in all parts of the building, connecting it up to a network, connecting it up to what is called a building management solution. And through that, you can then start monitoring and controlling a lot of aspects in the building, from your heating, the cooling systems, elevators, PABX, Wi-Fi, surveillance, access controls, everything centrally. And it's a real fun project to do. And I think people who are really into IoT and all those things, I think there's so much to be done from these things that didn't really exist 20 years ago. But and that's how the technology has evolved now. There's so many fun things that are interesting things to be done in the industry, which I think even the generations to come will find it very exciting.
Siobhan, do you believe that the workforce you need to get into those kind of projects and get them done are available in the country?
Quality, yes. Quantity, no.
Right.
So I think because definitely the skill sets we definitely have what it takes to build those skill sets and then impart that knowledge. But I think what Austin presented is definitely in the right direction. But I think we probably need much more as well. And I think all institutions and universities coming together to do that. But also, and I just saw someone pop up a question as well in terms of converting, right? Someone moving from one industry to the software industry, which is very much possible, and it is very much, I think, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of that happening as well. And it is also an advantage because if you have been working in a different industry, banking or even agriculture, right? And if you want to make that leap into technology, software, anything, because you then come in with a certain set of domain knowledge, maybe finance or whatever, right? And there's a lot you can do. Giving that knowledge, combining the knowledge that you have of that industry with technology. Because technology will be applicable to any industry, right? And the opportunities are just going to get wider. So if you are thinking or contemplating converting from some of the industry, and there are some programs that are being run by some of the industry chambers, industry bodies that are actively promoting this as well. Because even in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, there are so many graduates, even economics graduates, who don't have jobs now. Right? They've gone through a lot of university systems. So many who are there who don't have jobs, or not in lucrative jobs. They're finding it very hard to survive in those industries. But given those opportunities to convert into a technology or IT industry, I think that will be a fantastic and a rewarding change for them if they want to do that.
Yeah. If I may add something there, Havindra and Siobhan.
Yeah.
I think there is a question there. What somebody has asked, what about shifting from another industry to the software industry? Is it possible, and what are the challenges? right? Now it is possible. There are quite a lot of people who shift from other industries to the software industry. Sometimes I find that like there are graduates who have done an IT degree, basically networking and computing, the hardware side of kind of thing. And then they suddenly realize they'll be better off as a software engineer. So what do? So for those kind of people, we have another option called a master's in IT, right? Which basically anybody who has a first degree can do. It's a kind of a conversion master's where they are taught the fundamentals of software into, they are computing with a lot of emphasis on software. So we have quite a large number of students who join this MSc IT, and many of them have a first degree in some other field, like Shravan said, economics, or some, even there are engineers who now want to become software engineers. Perhaps they have done mechanical engineering or civil engineering, then they find that they're better off as a software engineer. So for those people, we also have a MSc IT. Of course, there are challenges. You will start at a lower position, and you have to adapt to the industry and things like that. So of course, there will always be challenges. But the other is, of course, now everybody doesn't have to go to software engineering to shift into the IT industry. Like I mentioned earlier, people from a finance background, right? They don't need to understand how the server works and how Java code works and all of that, but they can still be good data scientists, right? So they have to do something like our MSc Business Analytics type of course, where they come and learn how do you apply data science and computing to the business. So there are a lot of what I would call peripheral jobs, where somebody with a skill in one particular discipline learns how computing is used in that discipline and shifts to that, right? And those are also very lucrative jobs. So I would say for people who want to shift into I'm not just talking about software industry alone, but IT industry as a whole. Probably Shravan is probably looking at the global, bigger picture of IT industry as a whole. Just so many components to it. The path is there. There's another question about the IT academic industry. How is the future in Sri Lanka? I would say that the future in Sri Lanka of people who are getting into academics in the IT field, whether it is in software or data science or artificial intelligence or information systems, I would say that the future for academics in Sri Lanka in that space really great, because we already have quite a number of good qualified people in Sri Lanka. If you look at IIT, for example, we have so many. We have a couple of people who are professors and who have PhDs in areas related to artificial intelligence, such as machine learning, right? And we have multiple people who, many of our staff are working on their PhDs in those areas, cutting edge areas. And of course, today, unlike in the past, I don't know what the situation is like in the state sector, but inside IIT, the staff and the students have access to the digital libraries of our partner universities, right? So, for example, I have access to, I don't know how many journals that I have access to. I have access to almost all the major digital libraries that are available in a top-class university. So if all I need to do is to focus and spend my time, and I could very easily have enough material to do a PhD, right? Which when I did my master's many years ago, I went to 5 universities physically in Sri Lanka looking for a book, right? And the paper that I needed, I had to finally get somebody from USA to copy it and courier it to me, right? So today you have everything here, so you can actually sit in Sri Lanka and be a very effective IT academic. And then the opportunities are there not only in Sri Lanka, but for now, even all of us, I'm sure all the IT, all the education in all the people in the higher education industry are looking at this. Right? We are all looking at doing online or hybrid courses to the global market, not just to Sri Lanka. So if you are an IT academic in Sri Lanka, your market is not just Sri Lanka. You could easily do an online lecture for customers or students in Singapore or India or anywhere else. So it's a global market that we are looking at. So I would really encourage anybody who really loves to do academics to get into the IT related academia in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Austin. So ladies and gentlemen, we are fast running out of time, but there are a couple of more questions that I think would be really good if we could get an answer. There's a question directed to you, Chinti, and I think this is a very important one. What are the challenges as a woman you faced in an industry that is dominated by men?
That is interesting indeed. I mean, if I think back, I would say I was as confident, maybe sometimes more aggressive than my male team members and counterparts. However, I think some of the challenges are there's a lot of self-doubt, and there's also doubt being put in your mind about if you can survive in the industry amongst so many. And I think your number one thing is to be confident and battle those self-doubts, and battle the doubts that other people put in your mind about being in the industry. And I asked a lot of the questions the team, people ask me is when I go into these sessions, young girls ask me, my family says it's a lot of late nights, and how do you manage it? My answer to that is a lot of doctors, nurses also do a lot of late nights, but they never get asked that question. It's a bias about the IT industry, and I think we need to battle those doubts, because those doubts that people put in people's minds are through biases that they have about the industry and the fact that a woman can not just survive but thrive in that industry. It is a lot of hard work, right? And it is, I don't know whether you knew this, but the IT industry actually long years ago, there's a movie about it. I forget the name of it, but it started with a whole group of women. But there was, in the early 80s, there was an IBM advert that made IT a guy thing, and it all flipped over, right? So it's all biases. It's all in our minds that we cannot do it. But what's very important is it can have its challenges, and you're constantly learning new things, and that means you have to create capacity. You can't ever get comfortable. So for me, I had to choose my partner correctly to be able to understand and support me during the challenging jobs that I did. I was in I very quickly switched over to business development, and I found my voice there. So that meant that I had to travel around the world quite often, sometimes all by myself, and your family needed to be comfortable with that. And you need to have a support system in order to do that. Fortunately for me, my husband runs a company, so he gets what I do really, really well and supports me throughout my process. So it works well for me. The third thing is, I think you've got to be confident and demand a seat at the table. You can't sit back. I think this goes not just for women, but for men. But, sometimes ladies tend to be a little bit more bashful than men. But, find your voice, speak up. And if the environment that you're in doesn't allow you to change your environment. Simple as that. Go to a place that appreciates diversity, go to a place that embraces it, and drives an inclusive agenda, and you'll be fine.
Thank you, Chinti. I think that was a very powerful message. And as much as the ladies who are listening in are going to benefit from just hearing that, I'm sure it's applicable to everyone out there. So thank you so much for sharing what you did. Nihara, the question that you've asked, I'd like to direct that to Austin. Is it possible to transfer to a foreign university after completing 2 years of your degree in Sri Lanka? So partial completion, are you able to transfer? I believe the answer is yes, but Austin, I think you'd be able to answer that much better.
So, I mean, for our undergraduate programs, we currently have two partners. One is University of Westminster, and the other is RGU, or Robert Gordon University. Most of the undergraduate programs are with the University of Westminster currently. So with the University of Westminster programs, we do exactly the same thing that is done in UK here in Sri Lanka. So you could like complete your first year here, and then once you have completed your first year, you could go on to University of Westminster UK for your second year and continue there. And also similarly, if you complete your second year here, you could transfer for the balance of the programs to University of Westminster. It's a straightforward transfer because you are, when you study at IIT, you are actually a student already of University of Westminster. So it's just a case of a student transferring from one location to another location. So provided you have met other requirements for obtaining your UK visa and finances and all of that, it's a very straightforward transfer to go to University of Westminster. But there are other transfers also possible, since our program is a University of Westminster globally recognized program. Many universities will give you what we call approved prior learning approval, which means, for example, if you are done say first year in one of our degree programs, you have done let's say programming in Python or something in our first year, something like that. And then if you go to another Australian university, and that university would look at what you have done in first year, and since it's a UK degree, they might say, okay, you don't have to do that again in our degree. We will give you an exemption for that, right? So that kind of APL transfers, we call it, approved prior learning transfers, are also possible with other universities.
Awesome, thank you so much. Sandul, I believe that answers your question also. Sandul, it's the same question, so I believe you've got your answer as well. All right, it's time to bring things to a close. I think we had an amazing session. Chinti, Shevan, and Austin, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for your time and all the input you brought to this session. I have no doubt you have added so much of value to this discussion. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. I wish you all a very pleasant night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.